Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about understanding how we apply supplemental lifts to main lifts and understanding the strength. Because I've made a statement before, which I later retracted, and I had said, I think briefly in a video a very long time ago, that look, I mean, if you can do sets of 10 with 135 on the good morning and 135 for sets of 10 on strict Pendlay rows, you can probably deadlift 4 plates. Now, looking back on that, I've realized those numbers probably need to be a little bit higher than that. Okay? They need to be a bit higher than that. But what people forget is that these things are said in the context of a larger program. Meaning, sometimes when you say that, people think that I'm saying that, oh, if they just come in and hit X lift, like people will hear that and say, well, if I just get my good morning to this amount of weight, my deadlift will automatically be at this. And that's not what we're saying. The reason I look close at a lot of these supplemental lifts is that they're used to correct weak points on an exercise. Okay, they're used to correct weak points on an exercise. And some of the big standards that I set for my lifters are to get to something like a closed grip bench for 225 for 10 reps. Okay, that's a big milestone. To get to a 225 good morning for 10. Okay, that's stuff that I set as milestones for my lifters, because those are lifts that I have most of my guys use as supplemental work. But a better way to look at this is to understand that these things represent weak points. In other words, if you have a weak link that you can identify in a major lift, you know that you need to hypertrophy muscles specific to that, because size equals strength potential. Okay? And if that's the case, we can extrapolate data over from lift to lift. And I observe these things by watching what my different lifters do, and I look and have seen over time, as I've been doing this a very long time. And I've been running online coaching with pretty significant numbers of clients a very long time. By the time this video comes out, I will have already been doing that publicly for probably 2 years. At the time of even making this video, I have well over 20 clients. I have a lot of data to pull from watching my different lifters. And the things that I've noticed are just things such as, for example, if I have a lifter who has weak glutes and I have them build up their glute bridges, if they can get their 10 rep sets on a glute bridge up to 85% of their conventional deadlift max, their glute weakness will completely disappear and they will PR again. So how might we extrapolate that over? Well, we would look at that and say, okay, if we're going to use 10s, and if you're not going to use 10s, you can plug in raw rep max calculators and find how many reps you need at a different percentage. But you could also say, hey, what is my target deadlift number? What is my goal? What do I want to deadlift? Hey, let's say you're stuck at a 450 deadlift and you're trying to get to 500, and it seems like your glutes seem to be a limiting factor. And you start using glute bridges as a supplemental lift. Well, you might say, what's my target? My target is 500, so if we hold that 85% true, again, just based on my observations of myself and my own lifters, if you can get 85% of 500 pounds, you just plug that into a calculator, for 10 reps on the glute bridge, if you can build your glute bridge up to that, if your glutes really were limiting your deadlift, then guess what? You're probably strong enough to deadlift 500 pounds now. Or at least your glutes are. Your back might be a limit, your grip might be a limit, something else might be a limit. But that will usually resolve it. What about a good morning? I personally find good mornings carry over to squats better than they do to deadlifts for most of my guys. Okay. So what if you're having a problem with good morninging a squat a bit? What if you're struggling to lock because you end up getting folded over on a max on a squat? Well, what our goals should usually be to get our good morning as strong as our squat, and that will go away. But what I find is that if I don't have a lifter who's ever maxed on a good morning, I give them a benchmark such as getting to at least 60% of their squat max or their box squat max for 10 reps on the good morning. Okay, that's a good benchmark. And if we can get it to 70% for 10, they will never have a good morning squat issue ever again. That will resolve the issue. So if we use the good morning in that context, that's how we would use it. And I'm not telling guys, and I really don't like the idea of, oh, if you can do X amount of lift on this or this, you'll automatically get there. No, you should look at it as percentages. Okay? But you could take that same good morning and you could look at your squat versus your deadlift ratios and plug that around and do the same sort of basic math, couldn't you? Yeah? What you can do is look at your ratios and the gap between your different lifts. Okay, you know at any given time how much you can row versus how much you can deadlift, how much you can good morning versus how much you can deadlift. Okay, you should be looking at, can I increase all these supplemental lifts, my rep work on them? Can I increase them to a strength level that will scale with my big lift? And that's a good way to look at it. So if you take two major supplemental lifts such as the Pendlay row or the good morning, and you say, okay, where am I at right now? What is my 10 rep max? So let's assume you're not even doing them really heavy. Let's say you're doing 10s, which is very common. You should be able to look at those lifts and go, okay, if I can increase both of those by 10%, if I can get 10% stronger, meaning 10% more weight for the same reps, and they've been challenging, if I'm actually really working hard on them, then that should carry over. Now, if you've been half-assing the lifts, such as you've been really holding back on your good mornings because you thought they were heavy, but you were actually capable of doing 15% more weight already, you've just been holding back, and I've had lifters do that, then what happens? Well, you may not see the performance increase. But if you increase your 10 rep maxes by 10% on two different lifts like that hit two very different areas of the deadlift, your general strength level has probably risen enough that through hypertrophy, right, your strength potential should be up for the deadlift about 10%. And if your deadlift doesn't go up accordingly and you've got both those lifts there, then you have a completely different weak link that you need to address that's holding you back. And as soon as you correct that weak link, the deadlift will come up to 10%. Okay? People need to understand we're talking about general strength. The general strength that you get from a lot of these supplemental lifts has this amount of carryover. But when we make statements like this is in the context of full training programming. At any given time, at least 3/4 of my clients are on conjugate. They're on some version of the conjugate method. So when I run this math and extrapolate it, this already assumes you're running the base programming of a conjugate style system already. That means you're already squatting, deadlifting, bench pressing, and all of that stuff already. That means that you are actively training those things. But we use supplemental lift to raise our general strength, to get more well-rounded, and to bring up particularly weak links. And if you've correctly identified your weak link and you're still training everything correctly, and you fix that weak link by a certain amount of performance improvement on that supplemental lift, that should carry over. And I find that there are distinct patterns in my different lifters regarding how much they can good morning, how much they can, do on different lifts versus what they can lift for a 1 rep max on their big lifts. There's a very, very strong association. And you can tell a lot about someone's strength by looking at those different lifts, even the rep work. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.